So you can check out my review of the first Dresden Files by clicking up above. I enjoyed it. To me, it wasn't anything crazy special, but I thought it was a really fun nod to pulp mystery and thriller books with a fantasy twist, and I thought there was a lot of promise. You could see that Jim Butcher wasn't just, putting on a magical veneer to a mystery story. It was actually kind of the opposite way, where it is a fantasy story with like a mystery veneer. I felt that there was a lot of depth to things like the Never Never, and it wasn't filled with just like silly references. So one example, in the first book, there's a mention of like Santa Claus, and in a lot of works, that's sort of like a silly, offhanded, like, haha, all magical things. But the way that it was discussed in that first book, it felt natural, and it felt like it was well thought out, other than just like a joke. And I still got that a lot in this second book, but I have to say, overall, I was not as impressed, and I had been warned by a lot of fans of the Dresden Files that the second book is not a great follow-up to the first, and to really push through it, and the next couple are really, really good. So even though this is going to be kind of a middling review, don't worry, I'm still going to go ahead and keep reading in this series. So first, the basic storyline or plot stays in the same sort of contours as the first one. There's a grisly murder that happens that seems to be only possible with the existence of magic, and so Harry Dresden is called in by his contact in the police department, and this sets him on a series of crazy happenings and clues that bring him to the end of this mystery. Obviously, I'm not going to say anything else because that will be spoilery. But again, I appreciated the sort of pulp aspect of this, how quick it went. On roller coasters with that click, 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 and then you go down. Dresden just so you start at the top and then it just goes. And I enjoy that, especially because I read these books as sort of a go-between larger series that I'm reading. Like right now I'm between the Stormlight Archives and Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy, and both of those are like long books. So I get through the end of those and I kind of want to feel like I'm really reading a lot, and so I'll throw in a couple shorter books before going to the next one. And so that's what Dresden Files has been for me, and I really appreciate that. The character of Harry Dresden, some of his backstory, just like the first book, is sort of steadily revealed, which I really appreciate. But also some of the problems that were in the first one also are still there. It is very chauvinistic is too strong, but Harry Dresden is definitely a man of the early 2000s in how he thinks about women. Obviously not all men thought about that, but sort of the popular version of a man. Again, every woman he describes is very sexual in how he understands them, and there's a lot of unnecessary, to me, nudity in this, and particularly like descriptions of female bodies just at times feels a little gross. Philip Chase, I think, rightly in his interview or overlook of the Dresden Files, points out that even this is sort of an homage to pulp stories or noir stories of an earlier era. And I think that is true, and in some ways that could be done well, and I think probably later on in the series, again, I've been told by other people that it will get better, but in this one it still felt a little overt, a little too strong, and made me not necessarily like Dresden that much. He himself thinks he's old school and chivalrous. I think in the series he's gonna learn and grow there, and I think that could be really, really valuable. So I'm not gonna ding it too hard early on in the series, especially if that gets better later on. My main problem with this book is that it just wasn't that spicy, for lack of a better word. There wasn't a lot of twists and turns. There's a little bit of sort of a twist, but it felt pretty telegraphed. And I don't think it's too much of a spoiler. It's called Full Moon to say that it has something to do with the werewolves, and just the werewolf mythology and the way that Butcher chooses to present it is just, I don't know. It didn't really grab me. It didn't really have me all that excited. It just kind of happened, and that was the end of it. I had this in audiobook, which I really enjoyed for the most part. One problem I had with the audiobook, the reader does a fantastic job of sort of embodying Harry Dresden, because obviously it's in the first person perspective. But he does this thing where he'll breathe out And then we went to the back of the mansion. And I know he's trying to get sort of the feel of Dresden by doing that sort of exasperated feel, but at times it sort of felt like he was getting bored with his own story, which is also sort of how I felt about the narrative as a whole in this particular book. So it did not help a lot in grabbing me in some parts that weren't as interesting. At the end of the day though, I still enjoyed Full Moon. I would still say if you liked the first one, you will probably like this one, and like me, will want to go on to books that many people have said are really, really good. So this still isn't like definitely my top ever as far as fantasy works, but it was enjoyable. I'm gonna give it a pretty solid, let's say 5.5 out of 10. It was okay, nothing fantastic, got in, got out, and enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about Dresden Files, Full Moon in particular. Also, definitely let me know what you think about the rest of the series as a whole. If you think I should keep going, like I said, I am going to, but you know, encouragement is always nice. As always, first in, last out. Thanks for watching.